Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, it is time for TV Guys. I'm Matt,
I'm Brian.
and we are here to talk about some awesome TV shows, namely two in particular this time. We are talking about the fated Joss Whedon sci-fi western Firefly that only made one season, and we're also talking about the much more popular Will Smith vehicle, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, today. Two great TV shows, two great episodes. Brian, are you ready for this?
I am ready for this. Firefly has been one of those shows that multiple people, including you, over the years have told me to watch, and I've never gotten around to it. But now, in order to watch this episode, I actually had to buy the season on Amazon. So one way or another, I'm going to make my money's worth, and I'm going to add it.
The nice thing, I'm going to say this up front because a lot of people I know who have talked about Firefly and love Firefly have been on this give Firefly another season sort of thing, do a reboot. I disagree. I'm not going to give away, the movie, but the movie did have a sense of finality to it.
Yeah.
That it's like, this was a fine ending. And if it wanted to move on, it would be missing a lot of pieces. There's a lot of things that they'd have to do that I just don't think they would do in a very natural way. So I think it works just fine how it is.
If something has a good ending, just don't add another one. Looking at you, Indiana Jones.
Oh, Indiana Jones. I've gotten hate for this before. I don't think Crystal Skull is as bad as people say it is, because understand that Indiana Jones movies are B movies by definition. They are supposed to have a bit of cheesiness. They're supposed to have a bit of hokiness. If you look at the original, people like Temple of Doom, and Temple of Doom to me is even weirder than Aliens. I don't see how you can watch the Crystal Skull and be like, that is too far out there, and then see Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom I'm possessed by this Shiva guy and these rocks are glowing, and that doesn't make sense that you can have it both ways. So
yeah. To be fair, I haven't seen Crystal Skull since it came out in theaters, whenever it did, but I just didn't like it that much. Neither did most people.
I'm not saying it's a perfect film. I'm not saying it's on the level of Raiders or Last Crusade. I'm just saying it does not deserve crazy hardcore evil hatred and bashing and angry. So,
all right.
Now we're gonna get fan letters. Matt, you're wrong, and here's why.
We have to have fans to get letters.
That's true. And speaking of letters, no one writes those anymore. So we'll get tweets and mentions and stuff like that. That is more accurate.
Plus, we haven't given out our address, so I don't know how we'd be getting letters.
We have given out our email address. So
True.
We can get angry fan emails. And a lot of people who listen to this are friends with either one or both of us on Facebook. So they'll find a way.
True.
We do get every single week. We do get Paul Risdall's official review of our episode. He texts both of us in the text chain, and it's a lot of fun. So I appreciate Paul doing that. It's nice to get some feedback.
He said that he can't think of a character who's more universally hated than Kim Bauer from 24. And I just sent him screenshots of Nellie from The Office and Jar Jar Binks, and he was just touche.
I know some people. I was surprised to find this out if we're talking about The Office and hated characters, but I thought Robert California was a terrible character. And then there's a couple people dude, Robert California is hilarious. And I'm like, what are you on?
He would be fine if it was like Todd Packer, where he shows up every now and then. But as a series regular, it's too much.
I think it really would have gone a lot better if, honestly, they would have gotten Ray Romano and had his character be the manager. I think that was a distinct enough character that they could have had a lot of fun with him being that sad sack boss. And it's in that way, because The Office is all about, you get your work done, but you're not specifically productive, but somehow you're productive in it. It's it would be that fun challenge of you have a boss who's making you not productive, but yet you still somehow find your way through it. And it's a different way to do it. So,
agreed. Should we talk about the shows we're actually supposed to talk about now?
We have to give introduction. We got to
fluff.
We got to fluff the runtime here because it's not like we're long-winded or anything.
Depends on what we're talking about.
All right, who should go first, Brian? You or me?
I'll go first because I actually have a take on Firefly that I'm hoping will be new, which is that this episode of Firefly is a lot like the Muppet movie, and Nathan Fillion is basically Kermit the Frog.
Yeah, you're right. That's a take that I have not ever heard before.
Because think about it, it's framed where we're catching up with him somewhat in the future, and then we're flashing back. And as we're flashing back, we're getting kind of the origin story of how he meets all of his crew and how they all come to join him. And then that's just like the Muppet movie. We start with Kermit's in the theater watching it, and we get to see how he meets Fozzie and Miss Piggy and Gonzo and everybody. In that way, it kind of reminded me of that movie. It's like, how do we catch up with all of these characters? I'm not sure if in the pilot they're all already together or not. My guess would be they are, because otherwise, why would you need this episode to show how they all met?
Yeah, I mean, if you notice, it didn't have how did they meet Simon and River, and it also didn't have how did they meet Shepherd Book. So in the pilot episode, you do see those three come onto the ship like right away. We're introduced to them getting introduced to the Serenity crew.
Yeah, I don't know all names. I'm basically going to be calling them like Nathan Fillion and his crew.
The doctor and his sister, and then Ron Glass.
I didn't even know the Doctor had a sister.
Yeah, she was the creepy one. So they mentioned it once or two. The reason why I picked this episode, so first of all, there's some really, really great episodes. And this is actually like the start of like 4 or 5 great episodes in a row. There's like a couple fillers, but the one after this one is called Ariel. And I love that episode, but that one is very plot dependent. So I didn't want to give you one that you would require you, like, this is a very good standalone one.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons I picked the other one is it's a really good episode. And as you talked about the framing, like there's actually 3 time frames it's bouncing between that past one, the what happened leading up to where we meet Nathan Fillion at the very beginning of the episode, which is actually the end or the furthest in the chronological sequence. So
yeah. So this show starts with he's injured. We don't know why yet. Nathan Fillion is injured, and he's just laying on the ship, and he seems to be alone. And this would have some more tension, except even just a little bit I know about Firefly. It's kind of like the same thing with like Jack Bauer in 24. Like, you know that Jack's not going to die. So like I didn't really think just story-wise that he was going to be killed. But I think that's kind of the tension that they're trying to build. Like, what's going to happen to this guy?
Yeah.
And then it flashes back to, I guess it would be earlier that day. And the whole crew is just having fun, sharing stories at dinner. And then something explodes. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but the ship gets damaged and like they can't move. All their gas is gone. And not only that, but their life support, like their air is gone. So they realize we're going to be running out of air soon and we can't get anywhere. So we're just kind of screwed at this point. And then there's another girl, is it Zoe, who's injured?
Yep.
Hey, I knew a name. Zoe's
You
injured.
got it.
So they start, they kind of split responsibilities. The doctor's helping Zoe, the pilot and Nathan Fillion. And the pilot is he married or dating Zoe?
Yep, he's married to her.
Okay.
The one thing that you wouldn't get was like kind of the silliness when Zoe and Mal first meet Wash, and like how Zoe doesn't like Wash, and like, there's just something about him. Like you might have missed that they were married, and so that the whole play on that is, obviously they end up together, but the initial Zoe doesn't like Wash at all. And they're very polar opposites too. So it makes sense.
Yeah, I kind of got that. So then they're arguing about that, and eventually they try to like boost the signal, and they're kind of arguing about like end up in one of those fights, which this is the kind of arguing that you see every now and then in shows where they're arguing and screaming at each other, then all of a sudden they both agree and like, well, maybe I should do that. Maybe I should.
That was such a great line.
Yeah, I like when like screaming arguing turns into screaming agreeing, and it happens every now and then, but it doesn't happen as much as it should. I feel like it's a really good framing device.
Yeah. Plus, Alan Tudyk is really funny, and Alan Tudyk and Nathan Fillion back to back are just great.
So I mean, they go through some flashbacks, and some of them are more interesting than others. Like, is it again Zoe who comes on and basically says like, this ship's a piece of crap. Why do you have this ship? And they also show when the pilot is there, and they don't like the pilot that much. And they show when the guy who plays Casey, Adam Baldwin, was originally going to be like robbing them. Then he agreed. He all of a sudden he realizes that maybe if I join them, I'll have a better life. And so he just like shoots his own crew and then joins them. There's really not a whole lot I have to say about those scenes, really.
Yeah.
But the one that I thought was really funny was, what's the mechanic's name? the girl mechanic.
Oh, Kaylee.
Kaylee. When they show Kaylee, so Kaylee in the flashback, they had a different mechanic, and then he was hooking up with her, and all of a sudden, like the guy was basically just saying, "Well, I don't know, the ship can't move, I can't fix anything, we're stuck here." Just had this kind of crap work ethic, and clearly like realized that this guy's not going to be much help. And all of a sudden, the girl who to him was just like some girl he was hooking up with was like, "Oh yeah, I saw this when we were laying down. All I gotta do is boop this, doop, 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 whatever," and then all of a sudden the ship works. And you can see a Nathan Fillion like deciding in that moment, like, okay, I'm going to fire this guy and hire her.
Yeah, both Kaylee and Jane, Adam Baldwin's hiring one, are similar in the fact of like he wasn't even looking for someone at that time, but saw as like, oh, you know what? I see the potential of you being on our crew. What do you think about? And I liked those two moments of bringing those onto the crew.
As Jeff Winger would say, I see your value now.
Yeah.
So then they realize this plan is that they have escape pods. There's 9 people, including Nathan Fillion. So they said, all right, we're going to split up 4 people in each pod. They're going to go there, and they kind of argue with him. And he says, I'm going to stay with the ship. It's like we got to see if anyone is going to find the ship or have a signal beacon. You guys are going to all go look for help, and whoever finds help, we'll just get help for everybody. And they kind of reluctantly agree to the plan, even though they all basically realize that he's signing his own death warrant by staying on the ship that's running out of air. And so they leave, and the guy's he's just half asleep, like losing oxygen, like kind of fading away. And all of a sudden, another ship comes in, and it's not going to be that easy. It's like they do it back and forth. Were you going to try to kill me? Were you going to try to kill me? Yeah, the guy from the other ship found him. He comes on with his crew, and all of a sudden they come in guns blazing, get in the ship. And it's like, all right, well, we're just going to take your ship. In his like almost a dying moment, like I don't know if it's not exactly dying, but he's like almost dying. He's able to grab a gun, turn it on him, and said, all right, you're leaving, and you're leaving the part that I need for the ship to work. And so eventually he gets the part, and he passes. I don't think he's able to actually fix the ship yet because he passes out, if I remember correctly.
He does drop the engine part, and then he's finally actually able to get it on the ship and get it working, but then he passes out before he's able to call the other ships back to him.
Yeah, that's what. And then he wakes up, and the whole crew's back, and basically they decided that even though they had his captain's orders to stay away, both of the other ships with everybody came back to check on him, and luckily, now everybody's back. Now the ship's working. They have what they need. And it just seems like from there they can kind of go on about their business. It is a little bit of a standalone episode, like you said, and I feel like if you took it out, my guess is that storyline would still progress. But I think this is a good character moment. It really shows, and I don't know if this has been established already, that even though these guys have very different personalities and the very different conflicts between them, they ultimately still respect Nathan Fillion.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like Nathan Fillion's character has really awesome relationships with every other character on there. And by awesome, it's like it's not even that he likes them all the time. Like, his relationship with the doctor is it's like a weird tension because he never really asked for the doctor to be on there. And by having the doctor and his sister on there, they also, they said in that recap at the beginning of the episode that they bump into some Alliance trouble. And Alliance, like Nathan Fillion's character hates the Alliance. And so he wants to stay as far away from them as possible. And he wants to screw them over as much as he can and, keep other people free from the Alliance. So the fact that he has 2 kind of fugitives on board, that's a problem for him. So he wrestles with that, but also about doing the right thing for the doctor and his sister. And so, he's got great relationships. The one relationship, so you got a really good look into Mal's character. You got a really good look into Wash, the pilot's character, and you got a pretty good look into Zoe's character, even if she was knocked out for a lot of the episode. The parts that she was in, you really got a good feel for her character. The one I think that you didn't get a lot, apart from maybe River, the doctor's sister, was Jane, the Adam Baldwin's character. And Adam Baldwin's character that you'd see in other ones, you see how they met. You also see that he's kind of like a dingus a little bit. He's not the smartest guy, but he has he has a little bit of a street smart, which is what Mal saw in him, even if his book smart is like way in the toilet. And so Adam Baldwin plays such a different character than Casey on Chuck. It's so funny to see the difference. But Adam Baldwin, he's not specifically loyal to anyone. He respects Mal, he respects the work, and he respects money.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always like that little bit, and he hints at it where he puts Jane on one of the ships, and he says to one of the other people, he's like, Jane will be, he's good for a fight, but don't put him in charge, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's nice to like have one of those characters. Like, can you really trust him? I mean, he does his job, but at the same time, he also is out for himself for sure. So
Yeah. And to go along with the Muppet comparison, he's like Animal. Like he's nice and loyal, but don't put him in charge.
yeah, there's another episode that I really love that's very Jane centric. It's called Janestown, and that's another one that's around this time that I just love, and it's one of my other favorite episodes in this series. And I almost suggested it, but I wasn't sure how standalone that one was, so I didn't watch Out of Gas beforehand, but I remembered that it didn't really matter on the plot as much.
This is good. I don't think I'm going to jump to watching it as soon as with Chuck. I was like, I really want to see all of this right now, but
Yeah.
I am going to watch it if for no other reason than I bought it.
I have to.
Thing is, like with a show like this where they're in kind of confined to this ship, if you don't have interesting characters, then you don't have a show. And it seems like that's what they're doing really well, which is why I'm excited to watch it.
Yeah, I think the universe that they hinted at is pretty cool. Like, they don't explain, they never stop and explain. This is why they sometimes speak Chinese when they're swearing or whatever. I don't know if you caught that. There's like every now and then Chinese words are popping up, and like they never explain. But I don't feel like they have to. It's like it's just an obvious thing that China got as powerful as they did, and that it was so ingrained in culture that it's like people just speak Chinese and English, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of stuff that they don't explain specifically, but it feels very lived in.
Yeah. All right. That's all I had for that. Do you want to jump into Fresh Prince?
I do. I was excited to watch my first episode of Fresh Prince. As a kid, I think I've said this on the show before, but I was a lot more into cartoons than any like after school special type shows. So I never watched Saved by the Bell. I didn't watch Full House for many years. I didn't watch Fresh Prince, obviously. It took me a long time to watch Boy Meets World, but then I loved Boy Meets World eventually. So it's like all these other ones that I'm sure, Brian, you've seen several times over these episodes.
I've seen every show you just listed.
Exactly. I figured that was the case. So it's nice to finally be introduced to this world. So the episode that I watched was Winner Takes Off, and that was the one that features so at the beginning of the episode, Will and Carlton are playing like 3-card Monty, and Will is like kind of showing him, and they're going back and forth, and it's Jeffrey, right?
Yep, Jeffrey's the butler.
Yeah. So as Jeffrey walks by, he sees that I think like Will loses $20 or something like that, or they call him over. It's like, hey, Jeffrey, you want to bet $20 on this? And so, you immediately get this sense, and you immediately see that Jeffrey is definitely more on the poverty side than obviously Carlton's family is, and Uncle Phil, and how well off they are. And so, I mean, after all, he is their servant. So, $20 is a big deal to him, and so is the $50 after that. So, he wins $20 from Will, and then Will's like, let me win my money back, or however he does it, and then is able to convince him to do it again for $50. And then it's revealed they actually hustled Jeffrey. And so like Jeffrey's like, great, I lost about $50. And so Jeffrey figured out a way to get him back. He had a videotape of like this one game show, and he's sitting in the room watching it, and he like, you hear the question on the game show, and he says something that's obviously very completely wrong. And Will and Carlton are like, you didn't know that? Are you kidding? And he's like, please let me win my money back. So-and-so on this, I bet you I'll know this next one or whatever. And they're like, no, there's no way you will. So then the next one is a lot harder question, and boom, he knows it. And they're like, how did he know that? And then they find out that he was watching a video recording, and that he had been memorizing all the answers. And so he hustled them back. So like, well, we can't let him get away with that. we're going to do the same thing. And Jeffrey had let it slip that he plays the lottery and he buys lottery tickets with some of the money he gets. So they get a lottery ticket for the winning numbers from the previous week that they also had videotaped. By the way, videotaped. This is something that we used to do, us 90s kids. We would put a VHS into a VHS player, and whatever was on cable at the time, we could hit record, and then we could record it for ourselves. And so they they did that. They had like the Powerball numbers from last week. So Jeffrey's in and he's like watching the Powerball. They put the numbers on and he wins. He wins the $22 million, or maybe it's more than that. It was a lot, but he
Yeah.
wins millions of dollars. And he's like freaking out. I won. But then before they're able to say how we got you or whatever, he immediately starts like just going to town on the family. And like he breaks a really expensive vase and he opens like a really expensive bottle
Wow.
of champagne. And then he makes fun of Vivian's cooking and stuff like that. And then he quits and he walks out. And they're like, oh crap, we were really screwed up. And so then they're trying to figure out how do we get him to come back. And so they do everything that they can and then realize they actually have to just come clean and be honest with them. So then they go to this other place of employment that he finds because they're honest, and he realizes
Yeah.
I don't have any money, but he still is like, I have to quit. I embarrassed myself. You let me do this, so I'm out. And so he goes, gets another job. And so they're like, we have to fix this. And Uncle Phil is in very much agreement with that, yelling at him, you have to fix this.
Yeah, it's a really good a mad Uncle Phil moment, which was a staple that I knew I wanted to see, because like when he gets mad, like he gets mad.
Yeah. I liked what I saw of Uncle Phil in this episode, because you definitely had that like disciplinarian, and there's something about TV dads. Okay, so this was in the era where there was a lot more of a fatherless generation. And so there's all these TV dads that we saw that were kind of stepping in and helping to be that fatherly guidance for kids and for teens at this time when a lot of them had dads that weren't in the picture. And so Uncle Phil was a great example of that. You saw that on Full House. You saw that on a lot of TV shows where they had these really good dad characters and good dad moments. And
Yeah.
so, it was nice to see Phil be the disciplinarian side of that too, because you don't always see that in the shows as well. But
Explicitly with Uncle Phil though too, because like the plot is of Will's character is that his dad left him when he was a younger kid, and Will is like the Uncle Phil is the only father figure who's actually like been there for him. And then in the series finale, Uncle Phil has a line to Will when he's like, "You are my son." End of story, which is really cool.
yeah, I mean that really is awesome. I have seen the final clip of the one episode where Will's father comes back in the picture and then he leaves again, and like that whole thing. I mean, that's one of the most famous episodes of why doesn't he want me? And he just breaks down. That's a really good scene, and that's like that'll get you. That is acting at its finest for TV, especially.
Yeah. The only reason I didn't give you that episode was because I knew you had to have seen that scene.
Yeah.
Oh, and then before you get back to the episode, the scene that you're about to talk about in the restaurant, I believe they have to be doing a riff on one of my favorite movies, The Blues Brothers, which is a similar thing where the brothers are trying to get their trumpet player to join the band, and he's working at a restaurant, and they do exactly what Will and Carlton are about to do.
This was the funniest part for me, because there's the things that I liked the most of this episode in terms of comedy. Because I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I didn't get a very accurate depiction of Jeffrey's character, because he was acting out of his character for a lot of this episode.
Yeah, normally
am I correct in that?
Yeah, normally he doesn't get involved in the drama. Normally he's one like just to make a snarky comment and then go about his work.
And I could definitely tell that snarky comment, because like there was in that restaurant scene, there's a great snarky comment where there's like this really annoying customer who is calling for him and is like, if I don't get another drink of water, I'm going to die. And he's like, do you promise?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's a nice line.
Yeah, that's Jeffrey.
I figured that was. I'm like, I'm sure that's more what we tend to get from his character.
Mhm.
But what I really liked is I like Will mocking Carlton, and I know that happens in like every episode, especially the short jokes.
Yeah.
And so there was, I can't remember exactly the joke, and I'm gonna butcher it, but I'm gonna try it. But they're trying to get Jeffrey to come back, and so they're posing like they're his kids, and that like they're making a big scene, like Dad ran out, he's not coming back home, and so Will's like, what are we gonna do without you, Dad? Look at Carlton. We're so poor that he can't even buy clothes that fit. And he's like, I don't want to be short, Dad. I don't remember. Oh, it was a funnier line than that.
The line was, he knows we can't afford new clothes, so he just doesn't grow.
That's what it was. That's what it was. That was such a funny line. Like, I want to grow, Dad. I want to grow. Thank you for yes. That was the one that I'm like, this is a good line.
Mhm.
And so of course they convince him. He's like, yeah, I'll come back and I'll help you out and be your guys' servant at the house again. If I was Jeffrey, I would argue for like a 10% raise though. I mean, I'd be like, all right, I will come back because obviously they want him back,
Yeah,
but you're gonna have to pay me more. So
definitely. And he deals with so much stuff in with the family there. And interesting we say like this is a fun one with Will and Carlton actually working together because a lot of the times Carlton is just the butt of the joke because he's nerdy and a lot of times he's naive and they could have easily made an episode where Carlton is the one that got duped by this whole thing, but it's kind of interesting
mhm.
every now and then you have Will and Carlton teaming up, and those are some of the funniest moments too when when they're on the same side.
Yeah, I like that relationship or what I saw of it.
Mhm.
Because I mean that feels like very natural, even though they're cousins. That feels very natural, brotherly. Like you just give each other crap the whole time, but
Yeah.
I mean you also are there for each other, and I know that they had that throughout the series.
Yeah, definitely. And you didn't get a whole lot from Ashley and Hillary, the sisters, but for one thing, you said when they realized that something must be up with Jeffrey having recorded the game show, is after Jeffrey leaves, a question gets asked, and then Hillary, who you don't really get this in that episode, but Hillary is the one where she's very vain and very dumb, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
she knows the answer to some intellectual question. They're like, okay, Hillary just knew something weird is up. And then she tells him, yeah, Jeffrey's been watching this tape all day. And then that's when they realize that, oh man, we just got duped by Jeffrey.
Yep, I couldn't remember the name, and I also couldn't remember the relationship, so I didn't bring her up. I figured it was a sister. I didn't want to sound stupid, so. But yeah, I mean, the few lines she had were all like kind of ditty lines of like she had like a how embarrassing does it have to beg for money, and then yet at the same time like she's obviously begs and mooches off of her. Oh no, the follow up line was like, why don't they just ask their dad or
Oh yeah.
whatever? So it's like you do the exact same thing, and or then when Jeffrey like they actually think he's rich and he's like, I think it was Ashley. You said
Yeah.
he says something about buying her like a Mercedes or something like that. He's like, I'll buy you too. And then Hillary is like does the same thing that Ashley did and is
Yeah.
like, buy me one. And he's like, nice try. So obviously she's like very concerned about herself. I did get that from her.
Yeah. Yeah. Overall, Fresh Prince is just a good show. And overall, all these characters get their own spotlight episodes here and there too. But I think this one just did a good job at highlighting the humor of it. Because with Fresh Prince, you can go humor, or you can go serious. There's a lot of big serious episodes, like the one where his dad leaves. I figured for your first watch, I would give you a funny one.
Yeah. I mean, like, if I was going to, I love shows that really do that well. If I was going to give you a show, for instance, like with Scrubs, I would definitely pick one that has a serious thing because
Yeah.
what Scrubs does is that it's mostly funny, but then it does have serious moments. So I'll be like, one of my favorite episodes of Scrubs is My Lunch. And where there's that one patient, or there's these three patients that are all waiting on organ transplants, and then one
Yeah.
person dies and they're able to get organ transplants to all these patients, and it ends really somberly. It ends like one of my favorite moments in Scrubs history, but it's also a pretty funny episode leading up to it too. So I mean, I love that shows are able to toe that line. I think that's really impressive when they can, because it's hard to balance those tones.
All right, Matt. So at this point, should we jump into trivia?
What was last week's trivia? Do you remember?
It was who was supposed to play Jack?
That's
Maggie.
right. Yep, it was. So originally, I don't know if he had actually signed on. I think there was probably like a verbal agreement, but Michael Keaton
Yeah.
was actually going to play Jack. And I mean, I can't even imagine the show with Michael Keaton as Jack. That would be great. But he dropped out because Jack was actually supposed to die in the pilot episode.
Yeah.
So Michael Keaton didn't want to get involved in like a TV show and
Yeah.
want to be committed to that. So that's when he backed out.
He was okay doing the one-time guest appearance.
Yeah, and I think it was the producers that nixed the thing with Jack dying because they're like, you can't do that. You can't pull the rug out of the audience like that with this protagonist that they're following, because it was the moment it was going to be that first hour in the pilot. It was all going to be the same, and then they get to the plane, and then there's that one pilot in the plane, and then the smoke monster gets the pilot and kills the pilot, and they find the pilot's dead body in the tree. That's how they end the first half of the pilot. That was supposed to be Jack getting killed by the smoke monster, and you find Jack's dead body in the tree instead of the pilot. So here we go. Firefly actually does an homage to another science fiction property. And the way that they do that is that they have a corporation in the Firefly universe that is actually a corporation that exists in another fictional sci-fi universe. So what franchise or sci-fi universe is that? Bonus points if you know what the corporation is.
Sounds good. Obviously, I don't know the answer to this because I haven't only seen the one episode.
So we got some really cool things coming up next week. I'm actually really excited for this episode. We're going to talk about what was the best year for TV. We might have a couple different options, but what year had like the best season of the best shows that were out, and it'll be interesting to hear what Brian has to say, and it'll be interesting. I'm going to do a little bit of research to see, because there's definitely a time frame that I'm thinking of, but it's like, what was the best really year out of that? Because there are some really good shows on TV at the same time.
Yeah.
So
I definitely have some ideas too.
Golden age of TV. And then after that, we're also going to have our special guest host, Terrence from Movies on a Monday. We're going to do a joint episode where we are going to talk about WandaVision and the end of WandaVision. So far, we've got a couple episodes left, and it is just a trip. It's been so much fun. I'm excited to talk about it once it's all said and done. So.
Yeah, apparently both Terrence and I have been asking Matt to talk about WandaVision.
And it's like, well, we can talk about it, both of them, but I mean, at some point we should just wait till it's done and then just lay it all bare. So this episode is recording right after the episode 6 was done, and there was a song done at the end of episode 6 that has been in my head for the last week. I loved the song that they wrote for the end of episode 6.
Was it? Do you mean 7, the most recent one?
I do mean 7. I'm sorry, the episode 7. Thank you.
I agree. That is a catchy song.
I don't know how. It's like it's a mixture of the Munsters theme and I don't know what else. And something else. That's whatever. Anyway, as always, this is how our podcasts end. It starts off strong, goes off the rails at the end, and then we just kind of scramble till we get to the end music. But until the next time, I am Matt.
I'm Brian.
And this has been TV Guys. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned.